Welcome back to the Entrepreneur Spotlight, part of the Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show. Each presenter will have a total of 6 minutes to present their company. The first 2 minutes, they fly solo, and so for that time, describe their project and put it in the best possible light. The remaining time is for the Inquisition, where they'll be challenged by Richard, Elizabeth, and Liz to describe their project in greater detail. So, our first presenter this evening is Marc Goldner, who is a seasoned Passage to Profit veteran. Welcome to the show, Marc.
Thanks for having me on again. Really appreciate it, Richard. And you too, Elizabeth. So I'm one of the 3 founders of Golden Bell Studios. My 2 partners, Rachel and Rob, could not make it here, but they say hello to everyone. So our company is essentially a media-based content company, and we also have a products division. So we range in everything from 2D hand-drawn animation with the Valyard Mansion. We have a video game, Super Red Hot Hero, which is launching on October 31st of this year, which is like a side-scrolling platformer of like Super Meat Boy meets Super Mario Brothers. We have our products division. We have the Marshmallows, which is one of our best-selling stuffed animal plush toys. We have a very popular card game called Pretending to Grown Up, and it's also tied with another one of our toys, Unipegasaurus, and we're developing a television show and a concept pitch for that. So most of our products all have stories behind them that Rob, Rachel, and I have all written together or collaborated with other people. And one of how we originally met, one of our other products, Lunar Baboon, which is one of the largest web comics in the slice of life category. Right now we just hit over 1 million followers on Facebook, so that was really cool. And yeah, we also work a lot with licensors like Disney, Sony, Nickelodeon on licensed content and products for toys and games.
Wow. That sounds like a lot. So where do you find the inspiration for your characters?
So we have a mix of, Rachel, Rob, and I had been working together since 2014 when we were in college. We went to Ohio State, and we had decided that we were going to create a lot of concepts and characters, and we were writing screenplays, teleplays. We were in a bunch of screenwriting classes, and Rachel's been an artist for 20 years. So we started working on like different comics, and from there we had the idea to expand because we realized us 3 alone couldn't create all the content ourselves. So we were looking at acquiring a lot of content that we thought we could work on, and look at bringing on new partners and then hiring freelancers. So there's kind of a mix of different approaches of how we would be able to grow. And we've been around now for about 6 years. So the inspiration really comes from everything from like real life things, like Rachel and I have, my partner, we have 2 puppies. And so we have like just inspiration from them for like one of our shows that we're creating. Their names are Lucky and Lady. Then we just have like comedic things that happen in our like daily lives, or just funny things in the business that we're like, this would be really funny. So a mix of like comedy and then like a lot of like fantasy inspiration. So we each have like our own specific inspirations. Like I'm a big like fantasy guy. Rob loves sci-fi. Rachel loves a lot of like Japanese foreign culture in anime. So it's kind of like blending those things to create something that's at least new and different in terms of like content.
So how are you making money with this?
So a lot of our distribution is primarily via Amazon or direct. We do a lot of trade shows, conventions for consumers. We have a website where we sell direct. Amazon is huge. We just got into Hot Topic, which is really, really big for us. We have a few products.
What is Hot Topic?
Hot Topic is a retailer that's, I think they have about 800 stores, and they also own, the parent company also owns Box Lunch, which is like a nostalgia type store for people in the 90s and 2000s of like really niche content. That's where like the licenses more fit in.
What's the age range of your products?
So we set up the company with the mindset of being able to have content for all ages. So someone that would be a kid would be able to grow up and kind of grow up with our brand, and then be able to experience like content from when they're a little kid to when they're 8 to 12, when they're 12 plus, and then when they're adults we have like those more adult oriented content. And that's something that we saw a lot of companies have stayed away from because they didn't want to mix like adult content with family content, and that was one of the differentiators when we said we're going to create a company that has a little bit of everything.
That's really interesting. It's a hard thing to do, to have that grow in that way. With do you follow a whole line of, like, your plush toys or your the story? Do you follow the whole line all the way up through to a more mature approach in your stories?
Yeah, that's funny that you said that. So when we're writing a lot of these teleplays or pitch bibles or whatever they may be, we actually do write it with the idea that the story is actually getting more mature with the reader. There have been some shows that have been like that in the past. There aren't many. Because a lot of shows kind of position themselves for, let's say, like a 5 to 10 age range, and they'll start with 5 and then go to 10. It does happen, but it's not exactly like the most common. But yes, that is essentially what we're doing.
So when you're writing a series, do you know how it's going to end before you start, or do you just kind of go where it takes you?
That's a great question, and not many people ask that. So usually when we're writing stories, we have the concept of, like, what is this going to be? What is this world? And then we start developing some of the character ideas, the story plot lines, and just like broad strokes. But one of the first things that we do is we come up with the ending, and then we reverse engineer essentially how to get to that path. Because if you don't know where you're going, you could wind up writing 400 episodes. You may not have a real end goal, and then there could be a lot of like loose plot hole threads. You can have things that just don't make sense because you don't know where the characters are going to be going. And that's actually one of sometimes the hardest things to do, to be able to create a cohesive story that makes sense, that people like, because otherwise you can just have a show that's going on forever and then people are really let down by the ending.
Wow, that's fascinating. Is that pretty much the way most creators create stories, or is it just your style? I guess next time I'm watching television, I'm going to start thinking about what is the ending of this program, the season finale going to be like, or...
Yes and no. So different writers have different ways they tell a story. Some people write kind of the seat of their pants, and they're adventuring with as you're writing. Like, this is how I write, where I'm experiencing the story as I write it. Some people, like Rob, he is more structured. He likes having an outline of like where we're going, and that's really one of the reasons why we work really well together. And Rachel's a broad strokes concept type person. Be like, this I think would fit really well here. And that's why when a lot of shows have writers' rooms, that's a big part of it. So one of my favorite shows, I think we talked about last time, is Lost. They knew where they were going. They knew where they wanted to end. But because there were writers that were shifting in the room, Damon had brought on Carlton Cuse, and then they had kind of formulated, this is what we're doing with the show. And then when they knew that they had a definitive ending after the writer's strike, they said, okay, this is what we need to do, and this is how to get there. So they didn't know exactly every season what it was going to be. They had these broad ideas, and then things change because writers come in.
So Mark, I have a question.
Yeah.
You have quite a broad, diverse company appealing to a diverse market. So how are you marketing this?
So primarily, we do Facebook advertising. We have a very strong customer base that we're able to say, okay, so we can take this audience, we know what these people like, their interest, and then we can essentially be able to expand that. And then there's things like lookalike audiences, where people that bought, then you can have people that are like 99% or 95% similar to that person that had bought it. And there's different platforms that you can do that with. Facebook is, I believe, the most effective. I don't think that Twitter and Instagram advertising have been the most successful for our type of product-based stuff, but I know it does work for service stuff. And that's another business that I'm working on, that I've noticed that I'm working on a legal innovation software that people are more likely to work that way on Twitter, or respond to advertisements on Twitter or Instagram more so than Facebook.
It's interesting. I just want to ask you this because you seem pretty plugged in. What about TikTok? Have you considered using that?
I can tell you, I am not the big social media guy. I know just more about the advertising of like targeting, who to target. Rachel is kind of working on that type of stuff with TikTok and Snapchat. Truthfully, I know very little. I know what the platform is, but I don't really know about how to utilize it or monetize.
But she is using it?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't think she's started yet. I know they've been talking about it, but I'm not sure.
That's fine. Yeah, that's like supposedly high school kids, but now supposedly more adults are using it. So I'm very curious about it, but it sounds like not a lot of people know a lot about it right now.
Yeah, it's becoming big. I think it's backed by Tencent, I believe, which is one of the largest technology Chinese companies. But yeah, kind of, I was mentioning to Richard earlier, so the reason things have been a little bit slow is Rachel was diagnosed with a bone tumor.
Oh no, is she okay?
She is. She just lost mobility in one of her hands for a few months after the surgery. 'Cause she had to remove bone. It was really crazy, but she's fine. It was benign, which was great, but that kind of slowed down a lot of the stuff from production capability standpoint. And then mixed with the Corona stuff, which is a lot of people are like, no, what's going on? And explaining that to some of our customers and retailers is sometimes a challenge.
Wow, that's real. So getting back to the advertising, I'm really curious, how do you advertise entertainment to get people to want to click in to see the show or use the game? Is there anything special about how you position that advertising?
That's a very complicated question because it is kind of a little bit different with each product. I can give an example. We have this stuffed animal, the Wargie, which is from one of our games, Peasant Buffet, which in person at conventions, it flies off. We will sell a couple hundred, and it'll just, people will see it, they're like, oh my god, it's a corgi dog that's going to war called the Wargie, it sells. And we have these ads on Facebook of we have a puppet show, we have just images, we have videos, and it doesn't really sell online, and we can't figure out why. But then compared to the marshmallows, we have an ad of just the marshmallow. Is essentially a white little marshmallow character, and the ad on Facebook gets 55,000 likes and gets shared 20,000 times. You would think it's the same audience, but it's not. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis where we have to do these A/B testing and spend sometimes months finding who is the audience that's going to buy this, and then you replicate that audience and hope that it's not just 10,000 people.
So do you actually do videos of your stories? I mean, is that how you bring people in? Would I go to Facebook and say, oh, here's a little clip of this game that I could play, or here's a little clip of, how I would play with that Woogie or whatever you called it. How do you really engage me in your game or in your video?
This is my law student answer, which Richard, you'll appreciate. It depends.
Yep, I still use those words to this day. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It depends on who the product is geared to. So we can have some things that just tease the story for literally 5 seconds, some want more in depth. So with our video game, we have a 55-second ad, which doesn't even talk about the story, but we wrote a 120-page screenplay for Super Red Hot Hero, which is essentially a comedy. But because the audience for that type of game are more gamers and less interested in the story, it's essentially like a bonus. When they play the game, they'll experience the story. But then we have other things like Merbabies or Valiant, which is a story that we do market pretty much right away from the get-go.
Well, this has been great. Golden Bell Studios, right?
Yes, goldenbellstudios.com, and you can get our products at goldenbelldirect.com, which is one of our pretty much partners that works on all our retail and distribution.
Well, you've thrown out so many interesting sounding words as names. It just makes me curious to go look. So this has been Marc Goldner with Golden Bell Studios. Thank you very much. And you are listening to WOR 710. With Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest today, Liz Gall-Lerner, and we will be right back.